Okay, so my talk is about foresight analysis, and I jokingly call it a magic 8-ball, where you just shake it and you get some weird answer. Because foresight is about analysis, is about foresight of forecasting, if you will, and so, much like these old ladies in a tent to try and tell your future. Actually, it was detailing the different PIRs, Prioritized Intelligence Requirements. And later, and that was by Ondan Vladimir, I think. Let me see if I remember. Ondan Vladimir? Yep, it's correct. And then afterwards, there was an IRM workshop about intelligence requirement management. That was by Michael, Garrett, and myself. And then afterwards, there was this beautiful bouquet of people you can see down in the right-hand corner. And that's actually the Jamie, John, and Grace. And they talked about how to then present this into the risk equation of an organization. I'm going to take it a little further and then talk about foresight analysis. How can we look forward instead of being reactive of what's going on and what incidents we're dealing with? How can we then plan for the future, which actually is basically what the management wants, when risk wants, I mean. Some of the things about me, I like to play with dolls, and what I mean by this, I play with Star Wars action figures. So that's sort of a fun fact. If you ever don't recognize who I am, think about Star Wars and you'll remember me. The things I will do is I'm going to talk about the problem that we're facing. Then I'm going to sort of try and map out a form of solution. And we're going to show you an experiment we've done with CTI teams across the Nordics. And then some of the things we're going to do moving forward. When I talk about intelligence to CTI people, and we've seen throughout the talks that have been today and yesterday and also the workshop, there's some confusion about what the different elements are, what they actually mean, and what we do when we talk about them. And especially when we talk about the two concepts of security and intelligence. So when we talk about intelligence, of course, we talk about about security, we have what's called cybersecurity. The point here is that's a separate field from intelligence. You have, from security field, you would have geopolitics, you would have insiders, you would have physical security, but you work in cybersecurity, which is fair. That's a subset of security. On the intelligence side, however, we have what's called threat intelligence. So that's a subset of intelligence. It's all about the threats, about their motivation, their intention, their capabilities, their capacity, and also opportunity. That's all about the threat actor. And according to the SANS CTI course, and I fully stand by that definition, that's the entity behind the keyboard who's actually doing something with intent and capability to actually inflict harm on you. You can see that threat intelligence is sort of dragged into the cybersecurity sphere is because you, and when I see sort of us that work with CTI, we have a tendency to use this terminology and place it into our context, which is fair, but it creates some interesting issues. Because somehow in here we have CTI, cyber threat intelligence, where the C is cyber and the T is threat, but the intelligence side, it seems like we're really good at doing the technical aspect, but we're sort of missing how can we then apply, how can we follow a structured process. And that's sort of creating some issues when we communicate and share with our stakeholders. And then we have AI. It's coming in, slipping and sliding on a banana peel and making things worse because there's all these buzzwords again. We're trying to catch up and everyone's talking about AI. Everyone's talking about machine learning and LLMs and chatbots, and suddenly chatbots is AI. I'm not like, well, AI is so much more than just the chatbots, but I'm not going to stand here and talk about that today. Last year, I was on stage showing almost the same graph and said, I want to do a PhD on this. I've started doing a PhD on this. So I'm going to research the intersection of intelligence tradecraft into cyber threat intelligence, i.e. what can we learn in the CTI field from intelligence that we can apply in our daily jobs. But also, how will AI change the way we do analysis, change the way we do intelligence, change the way we employ technology? So that's the whole goal. When we look at the magic 8-ball part, we have a tendency to misunderstand what foresight is. And sometimes we get good answers, and sometimes not so good answers back. In intelligence, or specifically in CTI, in this model, we tend to be down in the left-hand corner. We are data-driven. We need data for something to happen. It's in the incident response acronym. So when the SOC gets some sort of alert, then they investigate and they elevate or escalate into incident response. They start working, CTI comes in to help and support. But that's, as I said, that's data-driven and highly reactive. We're reacting to the fires. And my goal is to try and, well, if we can prepare better, if we can look longer ahead in the horizon and have the right technology, have the right people with the right skills, have the right automation in place, will reduce the likelihood and the risks for the organization. So up in the right-hand corner, we have what's called estimative analysis. That's what the foresight is about. That's what we're trying to do. We're now going from data-driven to more conceptually driven, and we're also going from reactive to proactive. And that's where we want to be, at least for intelligence. However, this is the most difficult part of doing intelligence. Doing foresight and analysis is actually really, really, really hard, and you will actually be just as much make mistakes rather than being, correct. But that's the beautiful and the frustrating part of working with foresight analysis. A lot of you are familiar with the pyramid of pain, and most of you think that when you work with CTI, you cover everything, and that's also part of the strategic. Holy moly, this is the really most annoying part of presenting when something's not working. So when we talk about the TTPs, etc. So for me, when I talk about these things, I say there's a limit between technical and tactical, simply because when we work at the technical level, we talk about the ROCs, the hashes, and we're moving up now to talk more about the TTPs, the behavior, which is good. We're maturing. And it's also helping us to look at behavior so we don't have to chase all the small fires. We can actually combine indicators to see, well, this in combination is not a good thing. Let's see if this helps. So CTI, in my world, supports both the technical, tactical level, but also the strategic and operational. Most of you are working in the tactical and technical levels. So when we work with foresight analysis, and specifically if we're going to deliver intelligence to someone higher up in the organization, they usually have a much longer time horizon. And we are getting more and more questions that are increasing both in number and in complexity. And when we talk about these things, it's a completely different set of questions we're getting. It's not about, should we block this IP? These are more about who are the threat actors, why are they after us, what are the consequences if they were to be successful, what are the costs, what would the risks be. They need help on trying to understand and calculate risks so they can turn around and present this to the board or to the C-suite. So if you look at the organization, they focus on what they focus on the future risks, the future threats. How might this hit us tomorrow? While we usually, at the CTI level, we focus on the threat landscape and the threats currently or in the future, and that's sort of where those two merge. But most of the times, those who work with CTI do not have enough skills or experience doing foresight analysis. So in conclusion, for the introduction, the CTI group needs to be able to support in futures analysis and assessments. That's what we're trying to achieve here today. So in terms of groups, in the Nordics where I work in Norway, in Oslo, Norway, we have 3 different communities. In NFCERT, we have what's called a TIC, a Threat Intelligence Committee. In addition, because that's specifically for finance. In addition, we have what's called a TIC-TAC. That's a combination of threat intelligence and threat analysis. So we have done that in both Norway and in Denmark, and I'm part of both of those groups, and I support them on the analysis side, i.e. how can we do analysis and how can we actually improve the way we do long-term analysis. The goal of the TIC, they already have really good knowledge and experience with the technical aspects of doing intelligence analysis. They don't need another tip or they don't need another MISP action, connection. What they really need is, we have all the data, but we have experienced these things. Let's share what we have experienced. Let's discuss the larger image of what we're seeing, the so what. The so what of the so what. Try to learn more of what did I do that you haven't done, and what did you learn that I can learn from you. And there's an increase in focus and interest of moving from the technical, tactical level above and up to the strategic operational. And we see a lot of the more mature CTI professionals who have worked in the field maybe 3 or 4 years starting getting interested in this. And they are trying to find a way to seamlessly cooperate with other industry experts in their region. So that's why we set up the TIC-TAC in Norway and Denmark, because they wanted to do cross-sectorial collaboration on projects and also on analysis. On the TAC, on the other hand, that's where we want to learn about and use analytical tools, methodology, use the same vocabulary, use the same approaches. So the idea is that when they have done something good, we should share those experiences and also learn from each other, of course, but also bring that experience back into the organization so they can help other teammates to learn more about how to do futures analysis. TIC-TAC, we have about 20 plus members in all the 3 different groups, the TIC and the TIC-TAC. They're all seasoned CTI professionals, i.e. they worked with CTI for a couple of years. The TIC-TAC specifically are cross-sectorial, so they can talk to someone from Health CERT, or from someone from Finance CERT, or someone from Energy CERT, or someone from Telecom CERT. And they can start discussing, well, we're seeing this campaign. It started in the telesector because they got phishing SMSs. Let's combine forces and figure out how we can stop this early on. We meet several times a year, mostly physical, and we dedicate time then for the TIC and TAC subjects which they bring to the table, or we bring to the table. And their main interest in the TAC specifically is, we need to learn now what we should do when we work on long-term projects. And if there's an incident, we can't waste time on trying to figure out what to do. We should already have the vocabulary, the methodology, the team, the systems and everything set up. In other words, they want to be more prepared should they need to collaborate across sectors or between organizations in the same sector. So they've chosen a focus, which is structured analytical techniques. And the end goal, going through these processes, is to be able to do some sort of version of Foresight analysis. So those of you who have seen the book, this is sort of the Bible, if you will, in terms of doing structured analytical techniques. And the key benefits of using SATs is that helps us externalize our thinking. So whenever you have a thought process or you conclude with something, you have to externalize how you got to that point. Rather than saying, oh, it was snuggly, fuzzy group that was behind it. Sure, how did you conclude with that? Show me your thought process. What was the evidence? How did you then remove, the noise so you can get to the core of this? And having a good discussion between your teammate actually helps you externalize the way you think. Because, believe it or not, we all have biases. We all bring with us some sort of shortcuts to the noise that we see, and then we make claims that we perhaps don't have the same or the good foundation to actually stand behind. By using structural analytical techniques, we also try to reduce intelligence errors. So I think we all read reports where we disagree with the conclusion, and we have later found out that the conclusion of the report was wrong. So with using these tools, we can actually try to reduce that as well. SATs are really good also to dissect really complex problems. Think of geopolitics and cyber, how different conflicts are actually escalating out into cyber and how that actually escalates into threats towards us and our organization. And try to figure out how something that might happen in the future might escalate into our realm where we have to deal with it. And the variation of our bias, the problem we're trying to solve, the goal that we try to achieve, sort of helps us guide us into the right techniques we should use. And in these books, and in this book, I mean, if you know your bias, you can actually identify the right techniques to help reduce those biases. And a claim of mine is that the more we do them, the faster we'll go, and I'll get back to that point. But first, just a short talk about what is a bias and what is a heuristic. So a bias, and according to the definition, are mental errors caused by our simplified information processing strategies. So think of confirmation bias. We are sure that this group was snuggly fuzzy bear, and we are only looking for information that confirms it, rather than actually trying to see, well, what are alternative explanations for this? Our heuristic, on the other hand, are more experience-based. It's more like we shoot from the hip, because we've seen it so many times. We're sure this is the snuggly fuzzy bear. And a typical heuristic here is what we call groupthink. So if I say this is snuggly fuzzy fish, and you all, yes, it is, and nobody challenges me on it, then it's a groupthink situation. And as we see here, all of these biases and heuristics are really, really highly resistant to change. Once they're set, and we don't realize we have these biases, it's actually difficult to change them. And also, we don't see any emerging new trends. And we try to, I wouldn't say actively, but subconsciously, we're actually ignoring information that doesn't fit what we believe. So understanding that you individually have a bias, the team might have a bias, the organization might have a bias, the tool you're using or the sources you're using might have a bias, helps you figure out and navigate through all that misinformation and disinformation that's out there. Now, we're doing an experiment in Norway. And that experiment is actually we're teaching SATs to cybersecurity people. We're teaching intelligence analysis, critical thinking, the SATs, and also how to disseminate finished intelligence to the wider security community. And we're inviting them in to come and to learn, because I'm doing my research on it. I'm trying to figure out what are the values of doing SATs for cyber. Have they implemented it internally when they are done with the course? And a year or two later, how has that gone? So we can try and figure out what is the actual value. People say, oh, I don't have time to do SATs. Well, have you ever, when you started learning CTI, you spent days and weeks trying to figure out this small little thing. Now it takes you minutes. The point is, when you do it over time, you actually learn how to do it, and it goes faster and faster and faster. The project we did, we created a timeline for this year, so February, March, and April. We actually did the first parts, and I'll show you a little bit what that is. And we plan to continue over the next year into May next year. And we did what's called a cluster brainstorming session, where we have people bringing out all ideas. We put them into a Post-it app on the phone, and then it ends up in a software called Miro. And in Miro, we can then start working together online and moving stuff around and creating clusters. Based on those clusters, we actually then can discuss key drivers. What are the causes for whatever situation we're talking about? And then you see I've removed by design some of the things you see at the bottom row, because this is a TLP Clear session, so I can't show you all the things we discussed. But here we generate different drivers, different scenarios, and as you can see, there's a little dot in the center there, and it's moving, because when we have indicators, we're moving towards one of the scenarios. And that helps us now redo the process, so we can actually tailor and actually continue the process and always update to new events, new data, that oh, now we're moving towards this, and we can then start warning people. So the different ticks have done different research questions. This is about AI, machine learning, and how that might change the cyber threat landscape. In Denmark, they did another question, and that's more of the if threat actors who are doing ransomware today, seemingly, by chance, what if they started to actually focus and target organizations specifically in Denmark? And the NFCERT, they actually focus on what if the Russia-Ukraine conflict or war stopped now or in the near future, how would that change the threat landscape in cyber towards the finance sector? Would then threat actors who were engaged in the conflict suddenly come back and start working towards the finance sector? So those are the things they were looking for. So the Foresight analysis of what we're trying to do is that for the community, we wanted to have them be able to write their own reports using Foresights. So when they write an analysis and an assessment, they can actually make assessment about the future as well, not just of what has happened, but this is what we think of what's going to happen or might happen. And we make then the likelihood and the confidence of it, we can actually then have foundation for. And also to have a common voice and a standard to follow. So when we collaborate with an NCSC or with a government entity or between us, we have the same tools, we have the same methodology, we have the same words, and then we have also worked together on similar projects, so we can then go in and set the group and start working rather than trying to teach each other what's going on. And for each of the members, we wanted them to learn more about analysis, how to use it, teach it internally and actually start to implement it, try to improve their products and assessments so they can start using it for their own internal foresight analysis, and also try to learn and teach the rest of the organization more about what they do and how they can support, i.e. increase the value. The results so far, they have managed to identify their individual and the team and organization biases. They have now some experience with picking the right SATs according to the problem and bias. They have now been more advanced in terms of critical thinking, but also challenging the prevailing image. When someone claims something, they go, aha, why? Why is this going this way? Why do you think that? What is your evidence? What are alternatives to this? And they're also now testing how to do foresight analysis then to use it for their own reporting. So the main goal was to ensure that actually the CTI function can show value to the organization more than just reporting and indicators. Because at the end of the day, those who pay our bills, those who have said that we should be here to do the job we're doing, if we can show value to them, we can try and ensure that we keep our funding, or we can even increase it if we need some sort of training or new technology. I'll be quick, I've covered this. One important part, foresight analysis is not a truth teller. It's like weather forecast. Based on all the data and the knowledge we have, we assess it as likely that it's going to rain tomorrow. So make sure if we're ever going to communicate an uncertainty or a future, make sure that you also make those who listen to that clear that this isn't the truth. Yeah. If you ever want to support or learn more or get to reach me, go to my GitHub. It's called ERRUM, E-R-R-U-M. You can find me there. You can also find my LinkedIn and all the projects I'm working on. So I guess if there's any questions.
Yes. So first of all, let's thank our speaker. I also get where Murre is coming from.
Pardon?
I also get where Murre is coming from.
Yeah, there you go. And sorry about the technical issues. That was me. Sorry about that.
Any question?
Hey, one question. What sort of work have you done to plan to gather whether or not the foresight analysis is correct? Are you doing anything to document what comes out of that and how accurate that is compared to not using it?
Good question. So yes, that's what my research will be about. Train them, monitor what's going on, and then afterward assess the reality of, did it work? Can they implement it? Did they actually make good assessments or not? Were there better assessments during using SATs or not? Those are the things that will be part of the case study.
I have one question. Thank you very much for the presentation, first of all. I would like to ask, how do you decide when to warn the organizations during your monitoring for the indicators, and how comfortable your customers are spending huge lots of money on estimates rather than facts, so how they're comfortable working on those?
Yeah, so this is actually a two-part thing. So you guys, we today, we deliver facts. We deliver the report, it's based on our logs, it's based on our analysis, it's based on the malware and everything that we've seen, and we can make some sort of, we can tell them what has happened. The future part is not about spending more money, it's just adding to the assessment at this level. What we're testing now is actually how to implement into our assessment, into our reporting, some future analysis of what this might happen, what this might mean to us in terms of risks and costs. That's what we're trying to do so we can show value. Deciding whether or not to use it, that's going to be up to the organization, and that's the sort of the next steps I'm going to talk with the organization about. But I've received confirmation from multiple organizations, mostly finance, since that's where I work, to be part of the project. I'm looking forward to it.
Any other question? Yes.
Hi, Freddy. I saw that a few of your questions that you used as an example, they are, let's say, the bigger questions. Can you also use the technique to drill down to more, for instance, a threat actor, or a certain campaign, or something that's a little bit more short in time, to make it potentially a little bit more actionable for a single team?
Yes. So now interesting, I mean, you're mentioning an interesting thing because I deliberately did not talk about it because of the time issue. A lot of teams say we don't have time for someone to step aside and spend 20 minutes, half an hour, 3 hours on this. We're working on a case. But what we usually say is that when there is a case ongoing, you do your own thing. When all the activities start to slow down a little bit, pull out that one person who knows the CTI stuff to start working on alternative discussions. And what you're saying, can we figure out which threat actor it is? And try to analyze with what we have, there are alternatives. Yes, that's an important part to discuss. Now we're talking about ACH, alternative competing hypothesis. And then you can start generating evidence, i.e. what do we know? And based on this, we can start pointing to collection. For us to be more sure if it's going to be A, B, and C, we need more collection on specific things from specific sources. So we can actually be part of the guiding in the collection as well. So yes, it's possible, but you have to have a boss that trusts you, and you have to be able to work quickly. I.e. you need to experience and done this many, many times. You can't try and figure out how to do an SAT on the fly. Yeah.
Great. So it's now time for coffee. I assume Freddy will be around later if you have more questions, or are you leaving?
I am running to the airport now, so...
So Freddy will not be around, but
Get him, get up.
So, perfect. Let's thank you for speaking again.